Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello, Scott.
Josh, friends, some exciting developments up in the old gaming sphere because it seems like the Netflix are going to be getting into video game development. Now, there's a part of this that makes me super excited, but I'll get to that in a bit. It mostly relates to me being an old-ass man, but I do have some good, positive memories associated with video games on the old TV from TV services, but we'll get there in a bit. This information initially came from theinformation.com, which was then corroborated by Bloomberg and then confirmed by IGN, who managed to talk to Netflix themselves. Now, it seems that Netflix have hired Mike Verdu. Don't know why I did that. He is a real person. But it is a dude from Facebook and EA who apparently oversaw all of EA's mobile division, which will make people run for the hills, which is fair enough. IGN note that the two franchises he overlooked were SimCity and Plants vs. Zombies 2. Both of those games not with great reputation. SimCity, obviously the console version, launched on fire in 2013. Plants vs. Zombies was so terrible that the original creator said, I'm done, and completely left the company. But maybe there's a way to make it work. Now, the twist here is that ex-Kotaku editor-in-chief Stephen Totilo, now writing for Axios, said that the games themselves on Netflix aren't going to be streamable, but said to think of them more like downloadables. Netflix wants to offer games as an incentive for subscribers. Last I heard, think downloadable games, not game streaming, which breaks my mind because my TV doesn't have hardly any storage space at all. Now, I did look into this stuff. Apple TVs, because one of the adjacent comments made here is to think of it like the Apple Arcade thing. So I looked into Apple TV storage. Now, they were offered in 32 gig, 64 gig models, but Samsung TVs, if you take them as an average about 8 gig, 7.6 if you get specific and look at the diagnostic screen. So it's that whole thing where if they start offering a whole bunch of downloadable games, it does kind of limit them to specific, 2D stuff or maybe smaller games or things like that. But what do you think of all this stuff so far anyway?
Honestly, Scott, right, every single time a company not known for games tries to get into games, I always wonder at what point will it fail? Not every single company has completely crashed and burned. The likes of Apple Arcade seems... Yeah, Amazon Luna is definitely not on the successful chart, but the likes of Apple Arcade, Facebook Games is probably doing well. I know it's got a lot of popular games on there, probably raking in a lot of money. There are a few exceptions to the rule, but, for the most part, it's the likes of Google getting into Google Stadia and then having to pare their plans back. It's the Amazon Luna, like you just described. It's even Disney, one of the most powerful companies, one of the most resourceful companies like in America. And, they even admitted that, games were too hard. They don't want to do them firsthand anymore. They don't want to take it in-house. They'd rather just license those titles out to people who kind of know the industry a little bit better. So with Netflix getting into this, there is some potential, I will not doubt that. But at the same time, part of me just thinks they've looked at the numbers that gaming as an industry brings in, billions upon billions of dollars, and gone, I want a bit of that. I want a bit of that slice of that pie, please, sir. Can I have some?
Well, the thing is, the release date that's sort of pegged in amongst all these rumors is that they want to have something out hopefully this year, but they're mainly aiming for 2022. So it's like, well, the only games you can turn around in that time frame are going to be 2D stuff, mobile stuff, smaller scale things that will maybe be monetized to living hell once you get inside them. It does say that they'll be offered, the thing that Totilo says, as an incentive for subscribers. And right now, the general sort of sentiment is that they're not going to charge extra for this stuff. But it makes me think of other, TV service-based games, which the only reference point I have is 2001 Sky TV stuff, which I'm not going to lie, I was a big old fan of. I'm just going to Behind Bedlam, Fathom, King Toot's Challenge. I'll take whatever they have. Now, if they can make any of those games anywhere near as memorable as those original titles, and I know it's because we were a different species back then, but they were lovable games.
Scott Tilford, you put out a tweet this morning, essentially championing those Sky games, those 2D games, those little mini games, essentially, and you got a good response. A lot of people were like, "Wow, I can't believe everyone loves these. These are great. These are my childhood. I have such nostalgia for them. I don't. Like this is very kind of like off topic, quite a tangent. But I have nothing but bad memories associated with those games. Those were the games that I played when I was out of console games, where I couldn't afford a new one. When I played Crash Bandicoot 2 to death, I would go downstairs, I would hit Sky, I would go over to the games tab, and I'd be disappointed that somehow GTA 3 didn't turn up on my screen. I was disappointed that I got these Beehive games and not what I really wanted. I actually, I'm going to go, if I'm here, I'm going to do it properly.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it properly.
Yes.
I disliked those games so much that when I was in this situation, I actually opted to spend a full day making a cardboard Game Boy, which I didn't own, and use my own imagination to visualize Pokemon on a bit of wood, essentially, rather than go into the sky and play those games. That's how much I associate it with bad vibes.
You could have been playing Fathom 1 and 2. I mean, I don't think those games have aged that well. There's a version of Beehive Bedlam on the Play Store. I did realise that this morning, having to Google for it. But yeah, I mean, there was nothing in 3D on that store. It was a very primitive time for video games. And plus, back then, when that service was new, was right on the cusp of, games even being able to run on like a PlayStation 2 or something. So it was a very furtive time. Are you old enough to have played games on teletext?
Honestly, I remember teletext. I can't remember playing games on teletext. If we're at the situation where this Netflix games thing is going to be the equivalent of teletext games, Scott, I think it's a bad idea.
What a time, mate. I mean, look, I'm pushing 30, I'm past it. But if other people are my age who might remember playing games on teletext, and I know that's going to be a fraction of our audience at this point, but playing games on teletext did feel like, oh my God, you're accessing this entire catalogue of stuff. There was barely any games on there. There was a couple of different quizzes and stuff like that. But teletext was like the original internet before that sort of took off properly. Point being, though, that in amongst all this stuff, from your like makeshift Game Boy Pokemon thing to the reality of Netflix getting into game development, they're going to need a hell of a lot of charm to make it work. It's going to need a hell of a lot of ingenuity for the service to take off because, like you said, the road to this stuff is laid with bodies from Google Stadia to Amazon Luna to anyone else who tries it other than the main companies themselves. This year we'll see the release of the Play Date, which is like a combination of other little indie games. It's that little console with the crank, which it looks like I've lost my mind.
Oh,
but it's
yes.
a little thing.
No, yes. I know what you
little
mean.
thing with a crank. And it's like, it is very hard to break into, the gaming industry itself. And like you said, there's been more failed opportunities than others. I guess, what do you want to see from a Netflix gaming division? Because for me, they have a lot of positive reinforcement as a brand right now in terms of in the video game space. Like obviously, Witcher was a massive success. I love the Castlevania series. I think all 4 seasons of that are an absolute masterpiece. Go watch Castlevania; it's phenomenal. But they also did little known things like Dragon's Dogma, the new Resident Evil series is actually brilliant. So I'm kind of like, I think they have enough goodwill in them that they can kind of transfer that across, but at the same time, they're trying to turn these games around in a couple of years, so it's not going to be anything amazing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I just need more clarification on what they're going to do. I think in one of the statements they said that they don't even know kind of what the game development is going to look like, which is very interesting. But yeah, you raised an interesting point there, I think. They have been cultivating this relationship with video game properties over the past few years. Like you just mentioned there, a treasure trove of, video game adaptations, a lot of which have been like really well received. Like Castlevania, everyone is telling me to watch Castlevania. A lot of people really love The Witcher.
Watch it, Josh.
I might do. A lot of people are really looking forward to the new Resident Evil live action stuff that's coming to Netflix. There's a lot of goodwill being earned with not only video game companies that license out these IP, but video game fans who, are now trusting Netflix with the games that they have held so close to their heart for so long. So I wonder whether they're able to license them to make, Netflix versions of those games in some form. Even if they don't, though, I still think they have, an interesting kind of like pedigree to come in on because they have all of the Netflix originals. They've been cultivating them for like the past 10 years or whatever. And even though the term Netflix original doesn't have the same inherently positive connotations that it once did. You used to say Netflix original, it would mean that you were going to get something interesting, something a bit cutting edge, something that you couldn't get anywhere else. Now they've definitely chosen a quantity over quality approach, but some of them still do hit. They still do have hits, and they have so many properties now that are Netflix exclusives that they could spin out. We could get maybe an Extraction, the Chris Hemsworth movie, a spin-off to that, or a spin-off to whatever the hell else they have planned. Another Stranger Things, game or something. And I think, they've got plenty of established franchises there that they could use to make video game versions of, whether that's going to be just this crappy, like clicky mobile game or whether it's going to be more, fully formed.
Well, the thing with Stranger Things is there was a 2D, like very well received enough tie-in to the last season of that show that they could just bring across. I mean, if we're talking, I mentioned like storage capacity before, they have to keep it under a certain amount of gigs. So, but that totally lends itself into 2D stuff. If they do a Netflix Castlevania version of a 2D Castlevania, like take all the characters, take all the animation from the Netflix show, partner with Konami and do that and release it as a Netflix original, I'm completely there for it. Like, that would be a perfect way to do that kind of thing. I'd be curious. I mean, I'm curious what other sort of like brand deals they can do and bring those things together. But the other like massive gaping question is, what the hell do we do for a controller? Because for as much as the Sky Remote was an underrated gem at the time, I can't see us playing that many games on an average TV remote. So I wonder whether they release something alongside it, Ouya style. Speaking of another console that completely crashed and burned, or if they license a controller and just kind of use the Xbox, or like let you plug anything in, Bluetooth controller or whatever. Do you have any quick thoughts on how they would like let you actually control these things?
Yes, a few. I think they will, maybe cut deals with the likes of, Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft to use their controllers and make them compatible. I mean, you could use the PlayStation 3 controller on some televisions. I think it might have only been Sony ones, but the ability is there in some form. But even if they don't do that, I imagine this won't just be trying to plug this into existing televisions. I imagine they will sell like a little dongle or something separately that increases the storage space that maybe comes with a controller. Like a little add-on for 40, 50 quid or whatever that kind of like gives you the kind of like expanded version of this service, kind of like how people buy Amazon Fire Sticks, kind of like how you have those specific TVs for Apple and whatever. I imagine there will be something out alongside the actual software itself that kind of comes along with it, but it obviously won't be a console. It might just be, like you said there, a controller and maybe more storage space, like a USB or something.
Yeah, it's a brave new world. The last thing that just was kind of just darkly, ironically funny is that like for the longest time we've thought of Game Pass as the Netflix for games, and I think even Phil Spencer himself has sort of said we want to be the Netflix for games, and it's just a bit weird or a little bit. I mean, it's a perfect business opportunity for Netflix themselves to go, well, we can be the Netflix for games, and then grab the EA man in, set him to work making some mobile stuff, poison the living hell out of that term, and at least you've got market dominance or search terms or whatever because you're big old Netflix and you might as well have a roll of the dice. I guess we'll see how it turns out. But let us know what you think down in the comments below. What's the best case scenario for Netflix entering video games spaces, and is there anything that you'd like to see from them in particular? For now, though, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
And we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.